Daystar Shemuel Shua Peterson, better known to fans as Tory Lanez, is a Canadian artist who rose to prominence when he dropped his mixtape titled Conflicts of My Soul, the 416 story, back in August 2013. Despite working pretty consistently over the last decade, his career has been defined by an act of violence in 2020. In July of that year, the rapper allegedly shot hip-hop star Megan Thee Stallion in the foot after they got into an argument while leaving a party. Lanez was found guilty of committing 3 felonies in connection with the shooting in December 2022. In August 2023, he would then be sentenced to 10 years in prison. In the days that followed, a handful of rappers and the assailant and victim themselves would share their reactions to the sentencing. Boosie Badass. Boosie Badass is not a name that would be immediately familiar to most genre fans. He started gaining momentum back in the 1990s as a member of a collection called Concentration Camp, before going solo and doing pretty well for himself heading into the new millennium. While things were going pretty well for him for a while, by the time 2009 rolled around, Boosie would have a lot of trouble with the law. I will get into details about that in just a minute, but Boosie's time behind bars means that he has a solid understanding of what Tory Lanez is going through and what the rapper can expect after his sentencing. The day of the sentencing, Boosie hosted a live stream on his Instagram account and gave his thoughts on the entire situation. Badass was of the opinion that Tory Lanez actually got off pretty easy, despite being sentenced to spend a decade in prison.
Thank y'all. He only do 5. That's state time. He only bro. Louisiana, that would have did 40. A crime on a woman, highly televised, 40.
Boosie would go on to talk about how he got 10 years for marijuana possession, which was his 3rd offense, before going back to the fact that Lanez was lucky he wasn't in Louisiana. While he had mentioned that he expected Megan Thee Stallion's shooter to serve only half of his 10-year sentence, he believed it might not even matter that much after being found guilty of assault with a firearm, illegal possession of a firearm, and negligent discharge of a gun. Later in the live stream, Boosie said,
I think state time, you don't do nothing but have 5 years. He do 3 years, a little paper. He be back out, you know. Stronger than ever.
While this was still a relatively positive outlook, Boosie had been critical of Tory Lanez back in May 2023 for not taking a plea deal. In an interview, the former concentration camp member had said, if he would have went in there and said he wanted to make a deal with them lawyers he got, he could have been doing time in a facility with damn near nobody around him. Boosie's perspective made a lot of sense. By essentially admitting he was guilty, Lanez could have used his admission to negotiate being sent to a low congestion, low danger facility, which might have made it easier for him to serve his sentence. When he made these comments in May, he spoke from experience because he had seen other people turn down plea deals and take things to court, only to have it blow up in their faces. In the same interview, Badass had said, I know a lot of people like that. They was offered 10 years and they didn't take it, and they end up getting 30. He would end his comments by saying that if he had been in Tory Lanez's shoes, he would have taken a plea deal without thinking about it twice. What makes Boosie's comments interesting is the fact that everything ties back to his own experiences with the justice system, which means that everything he has said has had some heft to it. I mentioned earlier that the rapper had run into considerable trouble with the law in 2009, and I want to talk about that for a second now. It is important to understand the experiences Boosie has had and why they legitimize his reaction to Tory Lanez's sentencing. The concentration camp member had taken a plea deal to his 3rd marijuana possession charge when he was found with weed, a blunt, and a gun in October 2008. That should have landed him in prison for 20 years, but taking the plea deal meant that the judge went a little easy on the rapper. After being convicted of drug and gun charges in September 2009, Boosie was placed on house arrest. But just a couple of months later, in November, he would be sentenced to 4 years in prison after his ankle monitor showed he had violated the conditions of his probation. Things would get even more complicated for the rapper in June 2010, when he would be indicted on first-degree murder charges alongside 2 of his associates. But that was just the tip of the iceberg. The district attorney would go on to say that Boosie and his crew took out a 35-year-old man over alleged turf disputes, and that if he was found guilty, the death penalty would not be out of the question. If that wasn't bad enough, he would also be indicted on drug and conspiracy charges on the same day, with it being suggested that the rapper was responsible for bringing in large quantities of drugs into prison with an intent to distribute. He was also linked to 5 other murders, but it is unclear if anything came of that. Boosie repeatedly professed his innocence, and things would finally go his way in 2012. In early May of that year, he would be found not guilty by a jury after 6 days of testimony. The jury reportedly only took 1 hour to arrive at their their decision, which suggests that there was little doubt about Boosie's innocence. Apparently, the trial had its fair share of drama as well. The prosecution had contested that the rapper had paid off a guy to take out an enemy. While the alleged assassin initially said that he had been involved, he changed his statement on the stand, saying that the detectives had coerced him into a confession. It was an insane development, and potentially enough to ensure that Boosie would not be found guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. Even though he was cleared of the murder charge and dodged the death penalty, the rapper still had to serve 5 years for his drug charges. He would end up being released in early March 2014, and his time behind bars would actually serve to add more notoriety to his reputation in the industry. Upon his release, Boosie appeared in an interview and said, "I'd heard my buzz had grown, but there's a difference between hearing it and seeing these Instagrams and free Boosie tattoos. I feel like Tupac because when he came home, it was his time. It's my time now." The rapper would continue to be a controversial figure in the years after his release, but that does not take away from the legitimacy of the comments he made about Tory Lanez. Everything he said was particularly insightful because it had little to do with his opinions about the guilty rapper or Megan Thee Stallion. After spending a few years in prison and dodging the death penalty, Boosie understood exactly how the law worked, and his words could prove to be prophetic as Lanez hopes to spend as little time in prison as possible. Speaking of Lanez, the accused rapper would also make a series of interesting comments over the course of his trial and have quite the reaction to learning that he will be spending the next decade in prison. Tory Lanez. This entire story would remain incomplete without the perspective of Tory Lanez himself, because, well, he has been the central figure in this whole issue. So I had earlier mentioned that Lanez had allegedly shot Megan Thee Stallion when they were leaving a party in June 2020. That wasn't news from the very beginning, though, as it was initially reported that Megan had received treatment for shards of glass in her foot. Things seemed to be okay between them earlier in the night, as Lanez and Stallion were both seen in Kylie Jenner's Instagram Live, but somewhere along the line, things went south. After the incident, police allegedly found Lanez and Stallion in the SUV along with the third person. There were a couple of rumors that the third person was actually Kylie Jenner, but they were quickly put to rest. A source said that they saw exactly what happened between both rappers, saying Lanez was supposed to be dropping her off at home with her friend, and an argument ensued. He started calling her names, so she said she wanted to get out of the car. She got out of the car, walked away from the car, and at a short distance he told her, "Dance," pulled out a gun and shot at her 4 times. 2 times hit her, 1 in each foot, and the other 2 missed her. Anyway, Lanez was quickly arrested, but he would not be behind bars for long, as he would get out on a $35,000 bond about 6 hours later. But as we know now, the rapper's troubles were just beginning. One important thing to remember in this entire ordeal is that Lanez has maintained his innocence since day one. Even when he was sentenced to 10 years in prison, the rapper's stance did not change. The thing is, he had taken responsibility for his actions in court, but some people mistook it for a confession of sorts, and that he was apologizing. In a lengthy statement he shared with his followers and fans on social media, Lanez said, "In no way, shape, or form was I apologizing for the charges I'm being wrongfully convicted of. I remain on the stance that I refuse to apologize for something that I did not do." It was quite the stand from a man facing a decade behind bars, as the rest of his message was about maintaining strength through adversity, while he thanked his supporters for staying by his side the entire time. I am going to get into Megan Thee Stallion's side of things a little later, so let's stick with Lanez for right now. As soon as he was accused of the shooting, Lanez's efforts to prove his innocence went into overdrive. In September 2020, the rapper dropped a surprise album titled Daystar, which featured 17 tracks, and all had something to do with the alleged shooting of which he was being accused. In addition to that, a common theme in the entire album was that Lanez felt betrayed by pretty much everyone he thought he could trust. Listeners immediately started dissecting the album, and most were drawn to the first song titled Money Over Fallouts, in which the rapper sang, "How the f you get shot in your foot, don't hit no bones or tendons. How the f your team is trying to pay me in some whole millions." Lanez would go on to rap about the fact that he had missed out on a lot of money because of the accusations against him, but that he drew strength from the legions of fans that were behind him. He was also clearly torn when it came to his feelings about Megan Thee Stallion. Sure, he dropped an album that basically tried to see him prove she's lying, but he was also clearly pining for a woman, who most consider to be Stallion. In the album, Lanez can be heard rapping about how he hopes to talk once again and reconcile what was once a great love. According to a court reporter, he even said he still cared about her and that they bonded over the deaths of their mothers and would often use alcohol to numb their shared pain. Another common message in the entire album was that the rapper was worried about how the damage done to his reputation was difficult to deal with. Considering the role that he was on in the years leading up to the shooting charge, it is hard to disagree with the rapper. The beginning of Lanez's career can be traced all the way back to 2009 when he dropped his first ever mixtape titled TL. To Lanez was just 17 years old at the time, but his raw talent was undeniable. He would continue working on other mixtapes and singles and EPs over the next few years, with a few highlights like Ric Flair in May 2015, which came out just a month before he dropped an EP called Cruel Intentions on June 26, 2015. Soon after that, Lanez would sign with Mad Love and Interscope Records, which was a big move for the rising rapper, considering that legends like Eminem, Dr. Dre, and Kendrick Lamar, just to name a few, had all performed under the Interscope banner. His first studio album, titled I Told You, would be really well received upon its release, peaking at the 4th position on the Billboard 200, between performing on Jimmy Kimmel Live and releasing 3 more studio albums during his time with Interscope. Tory Lanez would continue to grow in stature as an artist. He would wrap up his Interscope deal in early 2020, but that would do nothing to diminish his massive popularity. He would often refer to his independent releases as his real music, because while the official reason behind him parting ways with Interscope was never revealed, most assumed it had to do with the fact that Lanez was often butting heads with the label for more creative control over his music. And while he was rapidly finding his feet as an independent artist, he was also creating awesome ways to engage with his fans during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. The setup for his quarantine radio on Instagram Live was so simple. He would sit on a couch with a blunt and mic in hand, talk to his fans, play some music, hang out with some special guests, and just have a good time. Artists like Justin Bieber and Drake would join in on occasion, bumping the live stream's numbers to well over 300,000. In an interview, it was easy to see that Lanez was extremely confident of his abilities and was on the cusp of true greatness when he said, "I'm going to go completely independent. I'm not in it to play games. I've been in it for 10 years, and I'm still relevant." Just a couple of months after this, the rapper would be accused of shooting Megan Thee Stallion in the foot, and everything he has built could very well come crumbling down with his recent sentencing. Boosie Badass would disagree with that assessment, though, because like I had mentioned earlier, he felt his reputation was better than ever when he got out of prison in 2014. Unfortunately, that is a long way off for Tory Lanez. The rapper had already begun to suffer behind bars even before he was officially sentenced. Back in July 2023, it was reported that Tory Lanez was struggling in Los Angeles County Jail because he had been kept in isolation as he awaited learning about his fate. The artist had been in the prison since December 2022, and if he had been kept in isolation the entire time, this meant that Lanez had basically just been on his own for 6 months. A lawyer named Rhonda Renee Dixon filed a motion to become the rapper's legal counsel, saying that he had been on the receiving end of unusual and cruel punishment. Upon meeting with him, the lawyer said that his eyes were black. He was totally despondent. He told me he wanted to go to state prison. I said, "You want to go to state prison? Why?" He said, "At least I'll be able to go out in the yard and talk to people." That upset me. I don't think he's guilty. Renee Dixon would then take a moment to target the sheriff in her motion, saying, "Merely because he is well known, the sheriff has decided that Mr. Peterson is of such great threat that he must be confined in the same manner as those convicted of serial rape charges and murder." Dixon's motion would ultimately be denied, but it played an important role in informing people of the treatment the rapper was receiving in prison. Being isolated for 6 months is arguably nothing short of torture, and the fact that the reason for it wasn't readily apparent just made it all much worse. Imagine what the mental state of a person has to be to literally ask to be moved to a state prison instead of staying in county jail. Even before he was sentenced, Tory Lanez was treated as a dangerous man who could not be in the presence of other people. As he sets out to serve his 10-year sentence, the experiences that will await the rapper behind bars are not readily apparent. Charlemagne and DJ Envy. If you remember from earlier, I had mentioned that it seemed like Tory Lanez had really conflicting opinions when it came to Megan Thee Stallion. While that is understandable considering the past both artists shared, there is no denying that Lanez made a fundamental error by going after Stallion in the ways he did. The fact that regardless of the trial, where both sides were going head to head, he was trying to get the people on his side by attacking his alleged victim online did him absolutely no favors. Hosts of the Breakfast Club radio show Charlemagne the God and DJ Envy had a lot to say about how the recently convicted rapper had conducted himself. In a recent episode of The Breakfast Club, Charlemagne said, "I just will never understand why Tory was doing what he was doing on social media. Like I will never understand why he tried to try this case in the court of public opinion." In addition to telling their listeners not to believe everything they see online, Charlemagne and Envy arrived at the conclusion that Tory's actions had done him way more harm than good. It is pretty easy to see why the radio show host would feel this way, because the rapper did go after Stallion on multiple occasions, and it can be argued that he even crossed the line more than once. Now stay with me on this, because it could get a little complicated. After everything that had gone down between both rappers, the court had issued a protective order. This basically meant that Tory Lanez could not attempt to contact or harass Megan Thee Stallion in any capacity, or share any discoveries in his case with a third party. Pretty straightforward, right? But a tweet from a YouTube personality reading, "Tory Lanez DNA was not found on the weapon in the Meg Thee Stallion case," landed the rapper in a lot of trouble. Lanez's lawyers argued that their client had not passed on anything and that the information claimed in the tweet was incorrect, stating, if he, the tweeter, had seen this document, he presumably would have got it right. But that wasn't all either. A little before this seemingly false tweet was made, the rapper himself had made a cryptic tweet that read, "Good had me two best friends, and I got caught. That's what I apologized for." It's sick how you spun it though. This was potentially in response to a claim made by Megan where she shared a screenshot of a text message in which Lanez could be seen apologizing to her while saying, "Lie your way out of this if you ain't do what you was apologizing for." Considering the contents of the tweet, the court was compelled to believe that it was intended for Megan Thee Stallion. So between this and the alleged accusation that Lanez was feeding someone information about the case, the judge decided to up the rapper's bail from $250,000 to $350,000. This was not the first time that the rapper's bail had been increased either. A part of the protective order filed against Tory Lanez meant that the rapper could not go within 100 yards of his accuser, but he broke that ruling in August 2021 when he showed up at DaBaby's Rolling Loud Miami set, which just happened to take place right after Megan Thee Stallion's performance. When he was presented in court, his bail went up from $190,000 to $250,000, and the judge had a few choice words for the rapper. After telling Lanez he was potentially facing over 22 years in prison, the judge said, "You do not want to be doing things like this, sir. You have the means and the wherewithal and a lot of smart people around you to advise you as to how you should be conducting your life." Also, just a quick fun fact, this was the infamous performance where DaBaby made a bunch of homophobic comments that led to a number of music festivals canceling his appearances. So let's just do a quick recap. Over the course of several months, Tory Lanez was seen making multiple tweets against Megan Thee Stallion, despite a protective order explicitly forbidding such activity. If that wasn't enough, he even shared the stage with DaBaby in Miami right after Stallion's performance, which was again a clear violation of the protective order designed to ensure the victim felt safe. But unfortunately, that wasn't even the worst of it. Soon after the initial shooting, a source that had been close to the entire situation claimed that Lanez's team had allegedly sent a bunch of emails to media outlets while pretending to be a representative of Stallion's record label, 300 Entertainment. If that wasn't bad enough, the source further claimed that the rapper's team doctored text messages between both parties and sent them to multiple outlets as well. According to reports, screenshots showcasing these fake messages showed a made-up email ID for 300 Entertainment's head of creative that linked to a document claiming Megan did not want to testify against Lanez. It was absolutely insane and the stuff of nightmares. 300 Entertainment was quick to release a statement saying, "The email impersonation of our head of creative Kevin Leong with the intent to disseminate false information has been brought to our attention, and we are working diligently on Megan's behalf to get to the bottom of the matter." The other side's team denied having any involvement whatsoever in these allegedly doctored documents, saying that they were looking into these false emails to find out who sent them. It doesn't seem like much came out of this, but if Lanez's team was actually behind it, then well, it was just another example of the lengths he was willing to go in order to make things as difficult as possible for the woman he claimed to have once had great love for, Megan Thee Stallion. All of this started with Megan Thee Stallion stating that she had to go to the hospital and needed surgery after the incident. In an Instagram live, she said,
"I was shot in both of my feet and I had to get surgery to get the bullets taken out. And it was super scary."
While speaking with the detective later, Megan said that she had to crawl to a nearby driveway and that her wounds had been bleeding profusely. Further confirming that Tory Lanez was the shooter would put her on a 3-year journey that would see Stallion be hated, reviled, bullied, and harassed. But she carried on and is probably extremely satisfied to have finally gotten justice. Her journey has been far from an easy one. We're going to be jumping around a bit in time just to really understand what she has been through. So let's get into it. Over the course of the trial, she would repeatedly have her character be thrown into question, most notably when Lanez's lawyer claimed that Stallion's former best friend Kelsey Harris was the shooter. The lawyer would then claim that her client was just trying to intervene, but ended up being blamed for the whole thing so that Stallion could create a more sympathetic narrative for herself. In a scathing statement, the lawyer even said, Megan Pete Stallion is a liar. She lied about everything in this case from the beginning. She lied under oath here. At another point in the trial, when the defendant was under the microscope for allegedly leaking details of the trial to a third party, the deputy district attorney revealed that Stallion had been on the receiving end of multiple death threats and had been repeatedly harassed as a direct consequence of Lanez's action. Beyond the physical injuries, Stallion also had to contend with the psychological damage she had to endure. Just over a week after the shooting, in an interview with Variety magazine, the rapper said that she was not the kind of person to wallow in despair for long and that she was looking forward to moving on with her life, stating that the bad things don't last for long. Her mental state would go through a considerable change by August 2023, though. Her written statement, which was read out in court on the 7th, said, "Since I was viciously shot by the defendant, I have not experienced a single day of peace. Slowly but surely, I'm healing and coming back, but I will never be the same." A sentencing memo from June even saw the prosecution state that Lanez had used his online following to embolden his followers to re-traumatize Megan over and over again. So while fans and viewers only thought about the case when fresh information popped up or read an article about it online, she was having to relive that night every night. As if that wasn't traumatizing enough, she also had to deal with the fact that other members of the industry chose to side with Tory. For example, in his song titled Circo Loco, Drake sang, "This lie about getting shots, but she's still a stallion." It was clearly a shot at Megan and proved he was siding with Lanez in this case. Drake wasn't alone in his support, though. The defense came up with over 70 letters that supported Lanez, and that long list included a letter from Iggy Azalea. Those were a couple of isolated incidents, but a larger theme in this entire situation was a little more concerning. All of us are aware of what misogyny means, but this entire trial has brought misogynoir to the forefront, a term coined by a feminist author named Moya Bailey back in 2010 that was focused on misogyny targeted specifically at black women. That misogynoir was painfully obvious during the entire trial, as the defense tried to create a narrative of jealousy between Megan and Kelsey Harris as a result of romantic partners. Hell, if those sexist undertones weren't obvious enough, someone literally yelled the words, "How many times did you have sex with Megan?" at Lanez just a few days after the trial started. These experiences have actually served to make Megan the face of the Protect Black Women movement, as the rapper testified about the lasting consequences of this whole ordeal. While in court, she said, "I don't feel like I want to be on this earth. I wish he would have just shot and killed me if I knew I would have to go through this torture. The horrors would not even end there." The prosecution showed a bunch of messed up comments Stallion had to deal with over the years, and her reaction was a sad representation of the constant barrage of hate and vitriol she has been dealing with. I see these tweets and Instagram posts every day. "Oh, that should have got shot in the head. Too much twerk." Or, "Who cares? She everybody. She should have been shot." Those were Megan Thee Stallion's words, and they were heartbreaking to hear. Thankfully, the rapper would get some support towards the end of proceedings from the LA County District Attorney, who praised her for making it through all the hate and ensuring she got justice. The DA's last comment would be the most damning, though, saying that black women would often not even go to the police about crimes like assault because they would not be believed. This was a perfect echo of what Megan had said herself when she was asked why she waited a month to point the finger at Tory Lanez. She said, "The police come and I'm scared. All this stuff going on with the police. Police was literally killing black people for no reason." She would then even go on to say that she faced considerable hostility and aggression from the responding officers, even though she was the victim. Megan does not appear to have made an official statement about Lanez's sentencing, but it is clear that she feels more like herself and a massive weight has been lifted off her shoulders. She was seen in a really eye-catching bodysuit in her first outing since the sentencing and appeared to be at peace. Not only that, she also appears to be ready to make a big return to social media, which will definitely delight her legions of fans. The Lanez Stallion case has been one of the most heavily publicized, drawn-out events the industry has seen in a while. It has been riddled with drama, with everything from allegedly faked emails to death threats and a constant barrage of hatred sent Megan's way. But with Lanez now slated to spend the next decade behind bars, she will hope to put all of this behind her. Beyond everything involving the artist, these events could also serve as a misogynoir case study, as a deeply ingrained prejudice against black women has potentially arrived to the forefront. Rappers' reactions to Tory Lanez's sentencing have been quite varied, but it is obvious that despite a 10-year sentence, he got off relatively easy and could have gone away for much, much longer. It will be interesting to see what all of this does for the rapper's career, though, because if Boosie Badass is to be believed, Lanez will be a bigger star than ever when he gets out of prison. Odds are that will be when we learn if there is another chapter left in this saga. And that's our video. If you liked what you saw, check one of these out too. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.